In this video, I'm gonna share with you why doing the bicep curls on an incline bench is one of, if not the best exercise for your biceps. What's up everybody? My name is Anand from UnderdogStrength.com, and if your goal is to build muscle, lose fat, and get strong, then you've come to the right place. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Bicep training is not just for bodybuilders or people who want big biceps. You actually use your biceps in pretty much all of the major movements, such as pull ups or even the bench press, as the bicep acts as a stabilizer. You also use the biceps on the squats and also the deadlifts. Now, when I go to any commercial gym, I see people doing exercises like the preacher curl and the standing dumbbell or barbell bicep curl. And sometimes I also see people doing seated bicep curls, but I never really see people doing the bicep curls on an incline. The seated bicep curl has been a staple in my bicep training, and I definitely can say that it's been a huge contributor to my training success. Now, before we begin, we need to first look at the bicep. The bicep accounts for about one third of your entire arm, and the remaining two thirds is gonna be for your triceps. So if you want to build huge arms overall, you need to train your biceps, but also pay attention to your triceps. The reason why the muscle is called the bicep is because the muscle has two heads that originate at the shoulder joint. You have your long head and the short head of your bicep. The bicep has two main functions. The first function is elbow flexion, which means that the bicep helps bring your wrist towards your shoulders, and the other function is wrist supination, where your bicep helps turn your wrist outside or your thumbs away from your body. So when you do a bicep curl, especially with the dumbbells, you'll often see people doing the curls where they start their wrist at a neutral position, and then when they curl the weight up, their wrist is supinated. So this is using the two functions of the bicep. But there's actually a third function of the bicep, which is shoulder flexion. This means that when you use your front delts to raise your hand or raise your arm above, you're actually using your biceps as well to flex at the shoulder. If all this is confusing to you, make sure to check out the link in the description below to this YouTube video. This video will show you all three functions of the bicep that I just talked about. Here you can see elbow flexion, now you can see the third function of the bicep, which is shoulder flexion. And after this, you're going to see the second function that I talked about, which is wrist supination. So the first benefit of using a seated bicep curl is that you get an increased range of motion. Now, if you look at these side by side, you may not see a huge difference, but actually there's a big difference between the two. So here you can see I've tilted the image to make my torso look more upright on the incline bench, and now you can see the difference. On the left you can see where the weight or the tension actually starts from. You're actually pulling the weight from behind your body, whereas on a standing curl you're simply pulling the weight from your sides. So the seated curl has a greater range of motion. In a seated position, you're bringing the weight from all the way back here to about here. Whereas if you were only doing a standing position, you'd only bring the weight from your sides hanging down to up towards your shoulders. The second benefit of doing a seated curl versus standing curl is the increased time under tension. Now on the left you will see that there's pretty much constant tension on your bicep throughout the movement. Like as soon as you start moving the dumbbells, you feel the tension on your biceps, and even when you bring the weight up all the way, you feel the tension. Now on the right you will see that when you start moving the dumbbell, you will hardly feel any tension till about here, and then when you start moving from here to about here, you'll experience the max amount of tension, and then when you come back all the way to the top, you will have reduced tension there too. The third benefit of doing a seated curl versus a standing curl is that the seated curl on an incline places a greater stretch on the bicep. So when you do a curl while standing, you do feel a stretch, but it's mostly at the elbow joint. And as we discussed earlier, that the bicep attaches or originates at the shoulder joint. So this movement places a greater stretch on your bicep, not only at the elbow but also at your shoulder joint. Whereas if you are standing, you'll feel the tension mostly in your elbows and not at the shoulder joint. The fourth benefit of doing a seated curl versus a standing curl is that the seated curl eliminates any form of cheating. Now, even if you're trying to curl the weights really strictly, you will inevitably end up using a little bit of body movement, as you can see on the right. Whereas on the left, it's nearly impossible to cheat the movement. So how do you actually perform this movement? First of all, you have to find an inclined bench which is preferably adjustable, and you want to set the back angle to anywhere between 45 and 60 degrees. You want to make sure that your upper back and your traps are in contact with the bench at all times, and you want to focus on keeping your chest up. This is almost similar to doing a bench press or an inclined bench press. You should feel a good stretch in your chest, meaning your pecs, and your front delts. You will not be able to use the same amount of weight that you usually use for your regular curls because of the increased range of motion, but so focus on these three things. Keep your upper back in contact with the bench, keep your chest up, and feel a deep stretch in your pecs, your delts, and your biceps. So there you have it. These are the four reasons why the seated bicep curl on an incline is a superior movement than almost any other bicep movement. And just to recap, the four reasons are: first of all, the range of motion is greater; secondly, the time under tension is greater; the third benefit is that it places a greater stretch not only at the elbow but also at your shoulder joint; and the final reason is that it is nearly impossible to cheat the movement and you can isolate the biceps more. I hope you found this video informative. Now, just because this is a great exercise, that does not mean that you should avoid any other exercises for your biceps. It is sometimes useful to have different varieties in your training. But if you've never tried this exercise, I highly encourage you to try it out and let me know what you think. If you liked this short video, make sure to hit the like button, and if you have any questions for me, make sure to leave them in the comment section below, or you can email me at anand@underdogstrength.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.